Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back to the Citrine Path. Today, again, we have myself, Amber, and my amazing co-host.
And I'm Patsy from Violet Elements. Before we get started here, we just want to share real quick that this is our journeys and our guest journey on their spiritual life and their herbal life. So, everything we talk about here, we do recommend you do your own research and definitely talk to your provider before you start any herbal remedies or home remedies.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to episode 3 of our podcast, The Citrine Path. Today, we're going to be talking about how our words have power and how they can affect us in our everyday life. So, Mom, what are you going to be talking about?
Um, that's a good question. Just kidding. I have stuff to talk about. So I started doing this thing. I don't know. It's been a little bit to where I'm working with a lady. Um she's supposed to be my personal trainer, but I kind of refer to her as my life coach um because it's to me it's been way more than just personal training stuff. But anyway, she sends me a word each morning to kind of like focus on or pay attention to. And I found it super interesting on um, I'm supposed to journal about it, but for some reason I haven't been able to like really journal about the words. So I started just looking up the definitions and just kind of going with it. And I was like super shocked um, on like how what words we use today and the definitions that we use them under, like believing like, oh, this is what that word means. For the definition of it wasn't quite the same. So I found that super interesting. Um, and see, I'm just flipping through well, you can't really see it, but my journal. Just like looking at, there's a couple of them that were like super eye opening. And so I was going to look through them. I should have flagged them.
That's
Um,
super neat.
but yeah, so I just thought that was super interesting. Yeah,
That-
like, so the word enough, the definition of it is as much or as much is required. That's it. So, like, if someone says, "Oh, I'm not enough," or "I'm not good enough," so per definition, it's just as much as is required. So
Oh,
it doesn't really mean like overabundance or significant or whatever. It's how much is required. So, like,
that's
I don't have enough food. Well, you have enough food that's required. Like, you have enough to eat. You might not have an abundance or the type of food you want, but you have enough. I just thought it was interesting.
no, that is super interesting because I hear people say all the time, like you just said, I'm not enough, or this isn't enough for me, or whatever. But you're right. They're putting it as enough is extraordinary or a larger amount than what is required. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and like indoor,
Hmm.
like what do you think of when you think of indoor?
Like you're
Like if you
going
have to endure
through,
something.
yeah, going through something painful, like dealing with it.
Oh, you're pretty spot on. So the definition
Yes.
is your mom must have taught you good.
Yeah. It's from all studying all
Um,
those SAT words I never took.
hey, that's okay. See, it's coming in use now.
Hey.
But endure is to suffer. So either with something painful or difficulty with patience or patiently suffering is enduring. So if you have to endure something, it kind of suggests that it's not going to be something speedy. It's not going to be something quick. It's not something you're going to like get over real quick.
Hmm.
So if you're enduring something, you're like going through it.
Right.
Yeah. And then overcome.
Overcome. You get
Mhm.
over something painful?
To succeed in dealing with a problem or something difficult.
Hey, I'm doing pretty good this morning for only being 5 o'clock.
Yeah. um, Another one that I always like to use, and I use this with my coworkers, is being overwhelmed.
Mm.
So to be overwhelmed is to acknowledge something is bigger than you. So
Oh.
like most of your problems or something, so like work, you're like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed at work. But your work is not more important than you or bigger than you. So technically, by definition, it can't overwhelm you unless it's bigger than you. So I always thought that was interesting,
That's really cool. It like puts a whole new perspective on the word overwhelm.
right? So you just tell yourself, like, yeah, this is a lot or difficulty, like that kind of thing,
Hmm.
but it's not bigger than you. And it's a lot right now, but it's not going to overwhelm you because you're more important than whatever you're dealing with.
I really like that.
Yeah. So, what are you going to talk about today?
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about how it's was turned into a book called The Message from Water, but it's was a science experiment that probably gonna butcher his name, Dr. Skiro Emoto did, talking about how like proving that our words can impact the environment around us through photographing frozen water crystals.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I
and it.
have heard that, like water has memory.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen a lot of stuff on that about how, like people do different things to the water, like before they drink it, like add crystals and stones and whatever to it.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that originally is what got him started on the science experiment. And I think this started back in like the 80s in Japan. And he knew that it has been like at this point they haven't proven that water had memory. So he was trying to figure out a way how to prove it. And so that's how he came up with this. So um, he started by taking tap water and then would freeze it and put it under a microscope to try and photograph the ice crystals. And tap water didn't crystallize whatsoever. It didn't matter if it was in Japan, the neighboring cities, the tap water did not crystallize. And that's important for later,
Interesting.
so remember that.
I'll
And
try to.
and then they started taking spring water and took spring water and then exposed it to classical music. So then they took the spring water and like put it in front of a bunch of speakers and played
Mhm.
Beethoven and Mozart and all these different composers, and you could see the crystal started to change and change different shapes based on the music and what the artist was. And then
Interesting.
yeah, and then from there, um, they would take the same spring water and then they just take little pieces of paper and tape them on the outside of the bottle. And then the crystals would change from if it was positive to negative. So if it was a
Oh, so
positive,
they put like a positive or sorry to interrupt you,
no, no,
negative
you're good.
word on the piece of paper?
Yes. Yeah. So like one of them, they wrote thank you. And then the next one, they said you fool on it.
Mm.
And they did different languages, did a little bit different sayings. But every single time, all of the negative words, they either didn't crystallize at all, or if they did crystallize, they were unsymmetrical. Um, half of the because hang on, I missed something. So hexagons is thought to be basically the proof of life by this doctor. He said if there's no hexagonal shaping within something, it's not living and it's dead. So the negative words wouldn't form a complete hexagon, saying that it's dead water or
Mm.
not living.
That's interesting. Well, that
Yeah.
kind of goes to the whole, I'm not wearing it right now, but my pine cone necklace that has the seal of life on it,
Yeah.
that's the same shape. It's a hexagon, like with a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
little hexagons inside of it. Supposedly, you could build any cell design from that
Mm.
same design. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, and I remember in high school in art class we did the golden ratio, and because in Earth, if you track back like flower petals to leaves and all these different things, it makes this perfect ratio, and it looks like a swirl. Um, and pretty much every single living thing you can connect that swirl with something.
Hmm,
Yeah.
that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah, I could go on a whole rant about that alone. So when yeah, so then whenever the book came out and there were a bunch of people who wanted to try and experiment very similar to this at home by themselves. So this mother and son came up with the idea of taking cooked rice and putting them in two glass jars. And the same idea, one glass jar, they did nothing but talk bad to it, call it you fool, say you're stupid, things like that. In the nice jar, they would say, thank you, you're beautiful, those kinds of things. And over a span of a month, they've had this rice. And um, the one they were negative to turned black, smelled horrible,
Hmm,
gross. And the one they talked positive to, it still looked like the same day they put the rice in the jar. It didn't smell at all. And there was no mold on it at all. And this didn't just happen with one person, it happened over and over and over again with several different people who read his book.
hmm, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought it was super cool that even your food and stuff could be impacted by it. And then they took it even one step farther and they said, okay, well, if our words can impact our environment, what about our thoughts? So they took three groups of kids and parents. So they had a parent and one kid, and they would have them stand in a circle around a little vial of water, and they would think. They wouldn't. At first, they said something out loud. I think they said out loud once, and then the rest of the time they just thought it in their head, and they would do the same things. Either say "you fool," "thank you," "you're stupid," "you're beautiful," and they would watch the crystals. And even with them just thinking it inside of their head, all of the crystals for the negative words, they were ugly, they were not formed correctly, they're unsymmetrical. But then the positive words, they were beautiful, they were perfectly symmetrical. They had looked like trees were spurting out of the corners of the hexagon, and they were perfectly balanced crystals.
Wow, that's like super crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that like um there was a anti-bullying bullying campaign that IKEA did
Mm-hmm.
about 5 years ago when they did that with plants, and they did it in like an elementary school to like show them like the effects of their language on things. And they had two plants in like a controlled environment, and they took the kids' words and they recorded them, and they said nice things to one, and they said commonly like phrased words of what people would say when they're being bullied
Mm-hmm.
into the other. They recorded it, and then they kept it on like a loop for 30 days and played it into the containers that the plants were in,
Huh.
and then watched it. And the one that had the nice pretty things said to it thrived, and the one plant that was being bullied um didn't do very much, didn't have very much growth in 30 days, was kind of wilty, and had lots of like brown discolored spots and stuff on the leaves.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and there was a girl that had saw that and then used that same theory and did a science project with her class. And they took two plants, they bought them from the same nursery, they sat in the same window seal, they measured their water, gave them each the same amount of water, but did the same thing. And they had her classmates help out, And so they had like a check sheet. And if you came up and said something nice to the nice plant, then you like made this check mark on it. And they try to get so many of them a day. The plant that was being bullied in that scenario died in 6 days
In 6 days.
versus the other 6 days. It only lasted 6 days.
It didn't even last a whole
Um,
week.
mm-mm, nope.
Wow.
And at the end, when they saw it significantly changing, they said that they were trying to save it. Like they were doing everything they could by book to make the plant thrive again, and the plant could just never recovered.
Wow. That's really crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there's I'm drawing a blank on it, so give me just a second. I'm gonna pull it up. I read a book, and I believe it was called like How You Talk to Yourself.
Hmm.
But why I'm looking, oh, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. Um, and again, I'm gonna butcher his name, but it was by a doctor.
Uh-huh.
We'll put the information in there. Um, so he started a thing where like the self talk, like when you talk to yourself, like when you try to get rid of like your negative thoughts in your head.
Mhm.
So they started with doing seminars, and he would tell people like kind of the same thing, like your words have power. Be nice when you talk to yourself, pump yourself up, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And they would were telling people, like doing these big seminars, teaching them the power of the word and how it affects your body and all of that. And then he would tell them like, "Hey, do this. Record yourself saying these things. Listen to it at night when you're going to sleep or while you're driving into work." And they were like positive affirmations. Well, they found that they didn't have as much excuse me, they didn't have as much success when they were hearing themselves say it. So then they started, this is back in the day of cassettes. So they would record these cassettes of affirmations of him and his team saying it in their voice. And then they were send it out to the people that were participating in the seminar. And so you would get a set of cassettes and you would listen to it for a time. I think it was like a couple weeks. And then they would send you a new set of cassettes and you would send those ones back. But the power was in hearing it through other people's voice had a higher effect and more of a benefit than hearing it in your own voice, like when you think it, or hearing it after you record it. Um, so I just thought it was interesting. And now that technology has come along, he has an app now that you could go onto and it will say like positive affirmations, but it's in somebody else's voice. So I wonder, well, of course, like plants can't talk to themselves per se,
Uh-huh.
but I wonder if that's why it has such effect on them because it's the energy from somebody else coming onto them.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I could tell you 100 times how amazing you are, beautiful, smart, but then you'll somebody else that you don't know or somebody on the internet or something will say something and it 10 times more affects you than all the positive stuff that your family and friends tell you.
Yeah.
Like I wonder how that plays effect to it.
Well, and like if somebody says something negative to you, in a way, they're putting all of that negativity energy on you and it's going to continue to fester like a parasite or something, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool though. And I got to say, that's a pretty cool campaign that IKEA came up with.
Yeah, I remember watching it and, thinking it was a cool idea, but I didn't realize that it was IKEA that was doing it. But I guess they were doing a big anti-bullying campaign, and that was just one of the things that they had done in it. Um, so I thought it was super interesting. But then it inspired, kind of like that guy in the book, inspired so many things after it, like the little girl doing it with her class and then it was affected all of them.
Mhm.
It's just super crazy how, like, the same thing, like, that was a positive thing that was shown, but it affected so many people. Even here it is years later, and now we're talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting that, um, they didn't get more attention. Like, I'm surprised I didn't hear about this science experiment years ago. Um, but I actually just learned about it in when I was doing my sound therapy class, my sound bowl
Mm,
certificate. Because he talked a lot about how it's all about vibrations and it moving through water and that sort of thing. But then I seen this end part and talking about putting it to water, it was only like maybe 20 minutes of an almost an hour long documentary. And this part, I was like, yeah, no, this needs to be spread a little bit more and people need to hear about this because our bodies is over 70% water. So even if
wow.
it impacts such a small vial in such a small amount of time, imagine how it's impacting your body that's 70% water. I think your lungs are like 85% water just themselves. And then all of your blood and then the um, water in your kidneys and your liver and around your brain is surrounded by water. So if your brain's surrounded by water and you're getting those messages stuck in there, imagine how that would impact your brain every day.
That's what I was just thinking when you were talking,
Mhm.
like, my brain was braining for a second. So I wonder if it's like the water, because even in the plant scenario, the plant is given water.
Mhm.
They store water in their stems and their leaves and flowers and all of that. Makes you wonder if it all comes back to the structure of the water.
That's possible, but I've also seen some other people that will take a plant and uh play like music for it. Just like how this guy played Beethoven for the water. Will play music and stuff like that, and it will also impact the growth and the growing patterns of the plant just listening to Beethoven. So I don't know. That'd be interesting to look into more.
Yeah, going down that rabbit hole later.
Right.
Well, because like it just dawned on me, like, if the water structure isn't complete,
Hmm.
then how is it going to function like it needs to and go the places it needs to within your cells and within the cells of the plant if it's not if it's defected? In my mind, it's not going to work as well. It's not going to like connect to all those places and absorb through your tissues. Same thing like with the plant.
Hmm.
It's like fitting a square object through a round hole scenario. That's what plays in my head anyways.
Yeah, no, and you're 100% right. And then like think of the tap water. Their tap water was
Oh, that's right. You said I forgot. You told me to remember and I forgot.
yeah, but
It
I
didn't
did
do nothing.
no, it had no hexagons, but I forgot to tell you. I just thought about this. When they were thinking about the water, when they were thinking and putting the positive thoughts into the water,
Mhm.
they use they use tap water to do that.
So once they put the positive thoughts into it and played it the music, it was still tap water, but then it started to form
Yes.
the correct crystals,
Yes.
but not before.
No.
Huh.
Yeah. So they took water that they had never been able to crystallize before and then had them think these positive thoughts into it. Then it started forming crystals.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Huh. Now I'm gonna have to look into that more.
Yeah, and there's a whole documentary on YouTube. I'll link it whenever we post this video so everybody can watch it. I think
Yeah.
yeah, you could definitely tell it was made in like the 80s, but um it has really, really good information in it. And I think he has like 4 or 5 books out about different things dealing with this. And then it was neat because he is like a natural medicine doctor. So he would take people, and I don't know what he does or how he does it, but he like has been able to like completely cure like 15,000 people, I think it said on the documentary.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of people he couldn't get to that like lived really far away from him or were in hospitals and he couldn't get to them. And so he would take water and would like say their name to it. And he said even just saying their name to the water, he was able to get some information about what's going on with these people.
Interesting.
Yeah. But we got 5 minutes left. So here's another big thought breaker here for a second before we end out. So if our our globe around the world is also 70% water, give or take. So if our thoughts and our words and our emotions play such a big part in water, what is our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions impact the entire world, saying that the entire world is 70% water also. You know?
Yeah.
If you were saying these negative things all the time to everybody and thinking these negative ways, we're killing the water and taking away the hexagonal structure. So that's then impacting, plants and animals everywhere, not just here within your own house or within your own body or around your own space.
Yep.
Yeah. So maybe we should make a rule. Everybody here that's watching our little podcast has to say at least 4 nice things to random people, because you were also talking about random people helps you better. So say 4 nice things to random people every day, and let's make a good impact on everybody around us and around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Hmm.
Well, then the best water would probably be at the ocean because you can't have a bad day at the ocean. Everybody always talks about how they love the ocean. So I think we need to go to the ocean.
And it's already naturally Nemo flavored, so you're good.
But yeah, that's super crazy. I didn't even like add the connection of if everybody in the world is if everything is so negative, then
Hmm.
you're already negatively charging the water around, and then
Yeah.
it's just starting off that way.
It's just like a repeating cycle over and over and over again of just negative and bad and looped and looped and looped and looped.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. And for like Mother Nature, all that she gives us, I think the least we can do is just give a little bit back. And if it's just saying nice things to people or just sitting in the front yard and thinking nice thoughts to the rain, like, something, putting something out is better than doing nothing. I know that sounded really hippie now that I think back to it, but no,
That's okay. Right up my alley. Right up my alley.
that's okay.
I could do that. I could go dance around in the rain and sing happy thoughts.
Yeah, there you go. Little Miss Citrine would be down for that any day. All right, everybody, we are about out of time. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us again for our third episode. And I can't wait to see what we're going to talk about next week. Any final thoughts, Mama?
No, like it just puts a whole nother spin on the whole words have power. Like that just kind of all built up. Like I'm kind of mind blown when you were talking about the world in general. Most people have a negative outlook on life and how that's affecting the world with like the water. Like it all comes back to the water.
Yeah, it does. And then if you have a negative person at Walmart and you're standing next to them, like you're going to feel down and crappy because that's what they're putting off into the world. And because we're 70% water, that's going to go right through us. And then our water within our body is going to hang on to that memory. And then we're going to transmit that throughout the world also.
Wow. I guess it just goes to say that kindness costs nothing. It's free.
Exactly. And one act of kindness can then make a chain of kindness behind you.
Mm.
Mhm.
Okay, so call to action. Think nice thoughts. Say nice things. Spread the love.
There you go. All right, everybody. This is going to be it for us. See y'all next week. Remember, we do not treat, cure, or diagnose any illness. So if you have any questions about anything we talked about today, please reach out to your provider.
So we are always so honored and blessed that you spent your time with us. And we can't wait to visit with you next time. So please come back and visit us. But until then, go forth with love and intentions.